Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to have a collection of what really terrifies the people you love to read our stories. So, something a little personal from us to you, because that's something that everybody wants to know. You read our ghost stories and everything, all our tall tales, and you think, what really makes them jump in the middle of the night? So, we're going to tell on ourselves a little bit. I'm Teal Gray, and I'm going to be joined today with Mark Foltz, Tui Snyder, Claudia Hall Christian, and Linda Reinhardt Niece. And we're going to get right down to like what really scares us. Let me tell you just one of mine, and then I'll go to everybody else and we'll go around. I think the thing that scares me most, the thing that I've always dreaded and I hope never happens, is if you're asleep and you have feeling like something's in the room with you, and you turn over in your bed and you look on the pillow that should be empty beside you, and then there's something dead or creepy. They're looking back at you. That's my worst fear. So that's the thing I hope I never see. So that's one of my worst ones. And we'll come back to some more because there's a lot of things that really make me want to go hide somewhere, although I know there's nowhere you can really hide. So let's start out with Linda Reinhardt Niece. What really is something that might put a chill down your spine?
Well, I can talk from experience that one of the things that really scared the bejeebies out of me was going into a friend's house. And the minute I walked into the friend's house, I realized that that the house was haunted. And I could see a woman standing in the corner, and that was fine. That wasn't scary at all. But he took me on a tour of the house, and we went into this one room, and the minute I walked into the room, I felt like I was suffocating. And I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. And it was so scary. They thought that I was having some kind of attack or something. And so we whisked out of the room, and the minute I got out into the hallway again, it stopped. And it scared me. I didn't want to go back in the room. I didn't know what was going on, why this was happening. And I said, I think something terrible has happened in that room. You have to find out because you don't want your kids going in there. And so they found out that the old lady that lived there, he found out like from one of the neighbors, the old lady that lived there had developed pneumonia and literally died of drowned in her own fluids in the bed in that room. And it was pretty scary
Yeah.
to learn that. So, after we found that out, then he cleaned the room and cleaned the energy out of the room and everything. She went away, and the sister who I saw downstairs stayed and was very happy with everything that he was doing to restore the house. But it was a very, very scary moment for me. I had never had anything like that happen before.
Yeah, that's definitely a strong interaction you had there, quite a memory.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
I think she wanted to be known that that this was what that she was there. She was an old elderly lady. There was two sisters. She was the last one. She was the she was by herself. I have the feeling that they found her dead. So like she was all alone when she died, and I think that it was just that she wanted it to be known that this was what happened to her.
yeah. Make that last connection with somebody on earth before she crossed over, that she
Yeah.
lived. And, so many times the spirits, when people ask, why are they even still here? If everything's so great on the other side, why are they still here? Sometimes it is something like that they have lived this life and they don't want to leave it without somebody knowing, hey, I'm here, I lived, connect with me in some way,
Mm.
or sometimes there's a message to be relayed. So that's just kind of a neat thing. That it's a great experience that you had, Linda. Now I'm going to go to Miss Claudia Hall Christian and ask her, what is it that scares you?
Being unable to mute. I think that was my first. um, for myself, I think I have to tell a little bit of my own history. My my family has a long history of struggling with reality testing disorders. So my mother is a schizophrenic. I have a sister that now does that professionally. Has been on welfare or whatever it is, Medicaid for a long time. And so for me, the things that scare me the most are anything that because I've had a lot of interaction with the paranormal, the things that scare me the most are anything that breaks my own denial about these things actually happening. And we kind of move into the area of a lack of my own reality testing. Because of the schizophrenia and the schizoaffective disorder in my family, I always want to be here and now. And so mostly these things happen and I kind of poo-poo them or shuttle them off. So anything that feels very real, like I'm there and the dogs react, or it's not just that it's happening to me, those kinds of things are what I find very scary. I'm happy to tell stories if that's what you'd like to hear, but that's really what it is for me.
Yeah, that is scary because I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things we want to grasp our self, our true oneness, and when anything else invades that, it's a little scary because we have no control over it. We can't even always see them. So we certainly have no control on that. So I can.
Right. Well, anything again that might move into the sense of the delusional or a sense that I'm not in reality
Yeah.
is hard. We also in Denver's just one of those places that tends to be spirits tend to congregate, and so I've had a lot of experiences here in Denver, a lot of experiences in this old house we live in. So
Yeah,
it's not a
that's
safe zone.
interesting to me. There's a book I'm doing, The Sacred Derkos, and it's about the ley lines and about energy.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating to me. Denver is one of those just spots on the earth
Yeah.
that it's just almost, you talk about these vortexes people will,
Yeah.
or that it's an open door. It's just like the party is happening there. It's
Right.
really something.
It's a free for all, and since the
You don't
great
always want to come to.
Right. Since the Great Migration, since so many people are moving here, it's like 10,000 people a month are
Wow.
moving to Colorado. There's just now lots of people and lots of ghosts. So,
Lots of people, lots of ghosts, lots of energy,
yeah,
lots of things they're bringing with them. Some are attached. And
yeah.
some are, yeah, it's quite a thing. Well, let's move on to Miss Tui Snyder. How are you? And what could we terrify you with today?
Oh, well, I am doing great. I have kind of a funny thing that makes me nervous. You asked what terrifies us, what scares us. One thing that just gives me the creeps, puts me on edge, is when I hear a street sweeper coming down the street. I thought I would just, you confessed your silly thing, and I'm like, I might as well admit it. I don't like the sound as they approach. It just fills me with dread. It's so ominous, like sweep, 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 sweep. Next time you see one or hear one, it's just like, it's approaching, it's coming, it's sweeping. Ah! But the other thing that gets me, and this has happened since I was a kid, I don't like disembodied voices, or I don't like recorded voices. I don't like on the telephone, that we're sorry, the number you have reached is not in working order. It just, she creeps me out. Whoever, I don't like that. And that kind of plays into the story that I'll tell you. The other thing I don't like is the emergency broadcasting thing, that, this has been an emergency, that, but I don't like recorded voices, and phone things really scare me. So when I was a little kid, my mom had this crystal bell with a little crystal clapper, and I had gotten a book from the library. I was always looking up anything mysterious, the occult, whatever I could find. And they said, if you wanted to attract spirits, you should ring a crystal bell, like 3 sets of 3. So ding, 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 ding. I thought, hey, I've got a crystal bell. My parents aren't home right now. I kind of snuck over to where I wasn't supposed to be, climbed up, got it off the tall shelf, and went down, and I rang it like that. And what I was hoping was to somehow summon the thing that would jump on the bed downstairs. We had a bed jumping ghost, which I talked about, that would plague me as a kid. It would make this noise that only when I was home alone, and being the youngest, no one ever believed me. And so I thought, well, maybe I could just get it out. I thought that was what would happen. So I rang it, and then I sat there, and I waited for an eternity, probably 5 minutes, you know, for like I was 10 or 11. No, I think I was probably 12. I thought, oh, okay, so nothing happened. Maybe I'll go play with my hamsters. So I went over to see how the hamsters were doing, and I'm just like about to reach into the cage and pet one when the phone rings. I thought, you know, I go over, I answer the phone, I pick it up, and it is that, I don't know if you guys ever did this. I know we're all old enough to have used like everyone had a landline. You could, when I was a kid, you could dial 9 and then dial your own number and then hang up, and then it would ring your own house. And you would get this disembodied voice saying something like, you know, the party you are reached is not here. It would say, we didn't have a party line, but it would do this thing like, you know, and it'd make this weird series of click, 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 real distinct clicks and buzzes. And it was very distinct. And it was fun if you were playing a game with friends and you wanted to pretend that someone had called you. But I'm home alone. I was about to grab a hamster. Phone rings. I pick it up, and it's that. Now, the only way that sound happens is someone's in my house, had dialed 9 and then dialed our number. So I was so scared. Number one, I hated the way that sounded anyway, and I didn't know who could be in our house. So my parents got home, I told my dad, and he looked all over. Nobody was there, obviously, but I think that I kind of got what I asked for with that little crystal bell. So
maybe a little more than you
yes,
right?
Definitely.
Scary. That is scary. Now, Mark Fultz, what a la carte terror can we serve you today?
Well, in the work that I do, you see so much really just messed up stuff. You might be scared, but you really can't be scared. You have to deal with it. So when I was young, which, was 30 or 35 years ago, I had 2 experiences that actually I called on to myself because I had to get over being afraid. And I was around certain circumstances that when you're young and dumb, you don't know what you're looking at. And I had 2 sets of things happen that I basically went, all right, scare me until I get over it, is the kind of way that I went about it. And kind of like the more exposure that you have, the less fear that you show.
So you went for, instead of tough love, you went for just tough terror me until I have nothing.
Terror me until I'm done, because it built up a callus. And these 2 things happened within 2 years of each other. So, and after that, I was ready to go. I lived with some people, which of course, I'm a book that I've been working on with you, that they were really weirdos. And I didn't know how weird at the time, but we were weird, but they were weirder. And he had my friend, I won't say his first name, I'll just say his magic name, Asta. I moved in and was living in their house. They were poor, I was poor. I mean, I was living off of $5 a week for food. So, you go buy a loaf of bread and a thing of eggs, and that was 5 days, 6 days of food. And his house, which apparently, like other people he was associated with, they would open up doorways in certain areas of their house, and just and I didn't know that. And he was mad, he was a witch. He was in a little further than a witch, but he had opened up a doorway in his house, and this was an old ranch house, but it was like a fairly big for a ranch house here in the South, and it had a big basement with 4 bedrooms and a laundry room. And he would do his ceremonies down there, and apparently he just opened a thing up there, and it was just an open breezeway for stuff coming and going. And I really couldn't afford to move anyway if I'd wanted to at that time, so I was there, and in their living room, the way it started really heavily that we started seeing stuff is there was a mirror in the hallway that showed into the living room, And if you were sitting on the couch, you'd see something running by it all the time, all the time, all the time. So we had to take the mirror down because if anyone came to the house, they were like, what the hell is that? And, you know, and you always had to go into the basement. We were doing artwork and we worked for a ghost attraction. So we were making props and things like that in the basement. So we had to be in the basement a lot. And I have a thing about basements anyway. I mean, you know, and this one was pretty bad. But you would go down there, and like I said, it was an open doorway. You would just hear things, see things. He had a fetch thing he had created that he always was telling people was his familiar, but it wasn't. And he got to where he was kind of scared of it because it was hanging out down there. And there was a time when there was a lot of angst going on in the house. So when there's a lot of angst, if there's any spiritual stuff going on, it feeds off of it. So up and down the stairs, going into the basement, you know, you'd hear all night long, you know, something running up and down the stairs. He'd come and scratch on my door. You'd open the door, and there would be little tiny handprints, like a kid's, on the door about 2 feet up from the bottom. And you would hear it would just be scratching the door, and you'd open the door, and there's nothing, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, you know. And it was a poltergeist type of thing. So one day when I went down to do laundry, and I was coming back up, and it was really built very strangely. You had to, if you wanted to turn the light on downstairs, you had to open the door, flip the switch. If you were coming up from downstairs, you had to turn the light off and then, you know, open the door after you turn the light off. And, or that was my procedure. So I was carrying my laundry bag and a basket in my arms and went up and turned off the light and was opening the door. And up behind me goes bum, 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 bum. And this thing, and I felt a pressure on my tab, you know, it bit me. And I about jumped through the door before opening it. And I got up there now, you know, then when I finally realized what it was, you know, I was like, you know, damn, you got it. But you could hear it down there in the basement giggling its head off, you know.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
And I was like, okay, you know, well, since I had, you know, I thought, well, I'm going to get to where I'm not scared of you. Because it was making fun of me, you know, doing that. So I would go down there more and more, you know, and I got fairly used to poltergeist activity. But there was other things there. And it turned into where, you know, the more that the guy who owned the place, the weirder he got, the weirder that crap got. And it just fed more and more. And we had it was a Wiccan group, and I had there was a couple, Michael and Judy Myers, who were the acting priest and priestess for a little while. And I had a very strange experience happen. I went down there once again, the last time I ever went down there, to do laundry again. And in one of the rooms, apparently the one where he had done his ceremonies and had that open, when you're a psychic, you see things projected in layers, like it's being projected on glass. You know, in the Bible, they go, through a dark glass you see dimly. Well, when you see stuff, sometimes it's just like it's projected on a screen. And so you see 2 or 3 different things at one time, but you're seeing it all at one time. And I was down there and I felt something, and I looked down the very dark room, and it looked like larvae, 3 or 4 foot larvae, which somebody who is in magic told me what those were. And I was looking at them, and they looked like they were moving like they were in the water or something. They were just glowing. And when apparently one of them felt my energy, it transitioned into a human shape and touched my face. And when it touched my face, I got a sigil burned into my skin. So I ran up, you know, I was throwing shit and going and running. And Judy came over, and we were talking, and the sigil, I drew it down, I do have a copy of it somewhere, was a spirit signature. and it was an ancient spirit signature. And she started going, well, this isn't typical ghost haunting stuff. This is something from an opening. He's opened magical gates. And she said, and you're a neophyte. You don't need to be around this. And she said, and she talked to the spirit. It came up while she was there, and she said, it's trying to, in its own way, protect you. And so, but it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
But I learned that not everything that's scary is bad, and not everything that's bad is scary. Nothing. It's some things are good, even though they're scary.
Yeah.
And it's just because they're old. And
right. Yeah, and one of the things I think that it can help you if you are afraid of something or some energy is around you. Sometimes even your own self, your own personal energy can create these things. That's not what happened with Mark, but if you realize that you all, we have this inner protective device built in, our inner child, some people want to call it, and what it is, it's there to protect you from harm. And so, the spirits were kind of acting as Mark's protector, but it doesn't make it any less scary. And sometimes if you talk to your own self, your higher self, and say, listen, I know, I'm trying to move forward. You keep bringing up fear. And I understand that in the past, this has been something that was scary for me or harmed me. So you're actually trying to protect me from it, but it's okay, and you kind of like, you talk yourself into being okay with it, and realize, and the energy will shift even within your own self if you can realize that, something that you think is something scary within your own self, once it understands that you realize where it's coming from, you're not enemies, you're really working together. It gives you a different perspective. But with Mark, you were working with totally different energies and entities that were, that's a whole another thing. But the mirror, this being able to see things in the mirror, that's my second thing that I want to tell on myself. I have been so lucky. I have seen so many things, but I don't want to, and have as yet not seen, been in the mirror, just doing your hair, brush your teeth, whatever. And then, every once in a while in some movie you'll see, and then something's like behind them, and it's, I don't want that. I don't need that. I'm not signing up for that. Leave me alone. And so far they have, but that's my second thing, is the mirror. So I can see, like, when you said take the mirror down, I would be like, no mirrors in the house. We don't need any mirrors. Nobody needs to see anything. Nothing happening here. That's that would be my second scary thing.
You mentioned the mirror. I just wanted to say something real quick. You reminded me of something that my friend and I did when we were little kids, like 8 or 9. I was still living in Virginia, so I had to be under 10. And we did this thing, I think it was going around school, where they said you'd light a candle and then you'd chant a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I think it was Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, but there was a whole little poem. And then you turn around and you look in the mirror, and we did it in the bathroom and we both saw, when we turned around, we both saw a man who I later on realized is like a Mayan or Aztec guy. He kind of had a little bit of a bowl. We thought he looked a little like Mo from the Three Stooges, except like ancient and dark. We didn't know anything. We're 9 or younger. But as I got older and I learned about, like in history, we were learning about the Mayan culture, and that was like, and he was fierce. I don't know. It wasn't angry, but he just had the most fierce look on his face. It was just a split second that we both saw him. We screamed. We fled that bathroom, and I was like, did you see? I saw the man. It's just I forgot about that till now. But mirrors scare me a little, because
that would scare me. Now, let me go to...
Tui, there used to be a lot of Indians in the area that you're living in. They were really slaughtered by the Americans during the Pilgrim times and the Puritan times. The Puritan Wars and King Philip's War. So it's likely that not even Mayan, that he lived there because they were just wiped out. Really violent wars that we don't know that much about it unless you study the Puritans.
So
it's very
that
likely.
makes sense for Virginia. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, Claudia, do you have any more terrors in your closet?
Well, for me, I end up because I because of this thing where I don't want anything to actually confirm that it's real, I end up having these weird dreams. And so I end up having very frightening dreams that are probably more happening than they are actually dreams. One of the ones in this house, we have been in this house less than a day, probably our first night sleeping here. We were laying down to bed and I opened my eyes and there was a woman standing there at the end of the bed. She was wearing this, I don't know, like the clothes they wear in Hello Dolly with the big dress, and it was yellow and white, and she had a hat on, and her hair was done, and she was pointing at my husband, and she had this horrible look on her face, like, like he really did this, and just pointing at him, and I sat up, and the dog. Before I sat up, the dog lunged at her because she was there, just like that pointing at him. And I just told her to be gone, and she left. So I really feel like, I mean, it's a good time to say that I really feel like you have to have really good boundaries with the dead, because you can't, like, having open portals in your basement and all that stuff. No. I feel like they lived their life, and now it's my time to live my life, and so, get to see their experience, know their experience, communicate with them. But otherwise, it has to be on my terms. And so I tend to send ghosts on or try and get rid of them, do lots of space clearing. But that really terrified me, this experience with the lady in the yellow dress. Yeah.
Well, sure. And that's also your private space. So I think, you think when I'm in bed, and I'm safe. And then when you're invaded like that, you realize you're really not.
Was a brand new house, and then there's the question, was she pointing actually at my husband? Was she pointing at the wall? What is it that he could have possibly ever done to this spirit? What was she pointing at? And again, the dog responded. So, that's my terror, is that it broke through my reality that these things are actually happening.
Yeah.
The dog responded before I did. So clearly very threatening.
Yeah, it would be. And Miss Linda, how about you? Is there another skeleton in your closet you could shake for us?
Oh, you might not want to ask me that question. Well, I was just thinking about it, and I have to say, having somebody looking at me in the mirror as I'm standing there, that would terrify me too. Although I have, had people come in. I have an old mirror that's like about 100 years old, that hangs right near my dining room table. And I've actually had people come in and say they see people in there. And I've never seen them, but then again, I see the folks that are wandering around my house all the time anyway. So, I don't need to see them in the mirror.
But, you're busy with the other folks roaming around.
Yeah. But I think the other thing that terrorizes me is, and has for years, was heights. From the time I was a little girl, if I ever it was near some place it was high, and I stood at the edge, I felt like somebody was pushing me over all the time, every time. And it was interesting because when I went to Spain, I had dreams of Spain long before I ever went there, and I dreamt of this place that was near the ocean. At least I thought it was the ocean. It turned out that it was the Mediterranean Sea. And there was a castle up at the top of a mountain, and it had turrets that were created like the Moors would do. And it had this crisscrossy kind of wall that went down to the ocean. So I taught my first group of ESL students were from Spain, and I went to go visit them once, way back when, about 25 years ago now. And while we were there, they said, let's go to the beach. So we went to the beach, and I had told one of my students and his sister about this, and so they brought me to the beach and said, okay, now turn around and look up. And I turned around, and here is this castle that is exactly like my dream.
Wow.
And I'm getting goosebumps again.
Yeah.
Every time I talk about it, it gives me goosebumps. And it was the Castle of St. Barbara, and there was all kinds of conflicts and stuff. And so they said, tomorrow we'll go up there. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. You know.
Nice.
So we went, and something happened, and there was some kind of a shift, and I don't know what it was, but I got up there. They took me to the is it called parapet, the walkway around the edge of the wall of the castle, and out to one of the round things that then they're not turrets. They don't go all the way to the ground. They kind of like hang off the side of the building. And they said, look, you can see the whole Mediterranean. And normally I'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice. I can see it from here, you know. And I went over, and I'm like hanging out the window going, wow, look at that. That's so great. From that day on, I was never, ever afraid of heights again. I've been hanging off of the roof here at the house, and I've done all kinds of stuff, and it doesn't scare me. I mean, I would get petrified. And I had a psychic tell me that the reason was it was a past life experience, that I probably had died from, I fell off the
Yeah.
wall, you know, somehow, whether I was pushed or I fell, whatever. And and I had actually gone back to where it was.
I believe in things like that, especially since it was calling to you and came to you in a dream before you ever went there. You probably went and made peace with your own past life, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably true. It was pretty amazing. That whole trip was amazing because I knew nothing about where we were going. It was in Alicante is the area that we went to. And yet I could give explicit directions to the point where I told my ex-husband, stop the car, I'll go call my students, the family, and see where they are, because they don't have street signs.
Yeah.
And I learned once I got on the phone that the street signs are up on the side of the buildings, not on the street. So my Maria says to me, Linda, look up on the building. What name is on the building? And I said, oh, it says Dr. Gardea Drive. And she goes, oh, that's our street. She said, what number are you at? And the phone booth was right in front of the house.
Wow. That's synchronicity at its best, I think.
It was just like, whoa. So.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today and finding out a little bit more about what terrifies us, in case you just want to know. And we're always interested if you would like to comment on the video and let us know if that scares you as well, and what scares you. You know, we might want to know that. So I want to go around again and let us know what's going on with you and what's going on. So Claudia, let's start with you. What's going on? Is there anything, update us for what's happening in your life?
Well, I write fiction, so I've been very sick, and I'm just getting better. I'm just kind of getting on my feet, and so I have a number of books coming out that are compilations of my serial fiction. In June, we just passed over the 9-year mark, and Denver Serial now is one of the longest running serial fictions ever published.
Wow.
So at 9 years, when we get to 10, we'll kind of make that. So I have a couple of Denver Serial books coming out. I'm working on a mystery, and then I'm hoping to get a thriller done by the end of the year. So, and I'm also working on Women in Fiction. I started a radio project, a podcast project called Women in Fiction, where I interview women authors, and that's pretty fun.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, how can people connect with you, and how can they watch, the Women in Fiction? How can they connect with that?
Okay, so Women in Fiction is at womeninfiction.com, and to find out about me, you can go to claudiahallchristian.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and everything else, but that's probably the best way. A lot of my work is at storiesbyclaudia.com, so you can read there too.
Perfect.
So, thanks for asking.
Well, congratulations. Wow, that's quite an accomplishment, and we're excited for you, and we're all supportive of that. Yay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, now, Miss Linda, anything that you would like to tell us about you?
Well, I'm just finishing up my online classes that I taught for students that are extraordinarily gifted, and finishing up my summer ESL class. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing right now. Right now, I'm just trying to kind of concentrate on, But I did start on my Reverend Linda blog page on Facebook a new event called Blessings, Grace, and Magic. So we're discussing that. What is grace? What are blessings? What is magic?
I love that. And now you and I both have, we're both presenters at the World Awake 2017 conference in Maryland this year in November. So you've got that. And now to connect with you and follow your blog, what's the best way to find you?
Well, if you type in Reverend Linda Reinhardt Niece, you'll come to the Facebook page, and you can go from there. That's the easiest way to do it.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Tui Snyder, what is going on in that world?
Well, I just got back from a 2-week writing research road trip where my husband and I journeyed across deep East Texas, down to Galveston, then through Louisiana to New Orleans and through Mississippi a little bit, and went to a bunch of historic graveyards that I needed to take photos of for my upcoming book. And of course, it was my husband's like, you do know this is the most miserable, hottest, humid time of year. But, I had to do it. The book comes out on the 19th of August. So had to get a few ant bites on my feet and a few, slather the sunscreen on. But it was so much fun. I got to see some really interesting graves. I've been sharing them on my Facebook page and my Instagram page a bit as I go. Although right now, this week, now that we're back, I'm madly adding those photos to my manuscript, and I'm getting it together. And this is what the cover of the book looks like. It'll be bigger, the book, because it's a little mock-up, but it's called, I don't know if I got too much glare there. It's Understanding Cemetery Symbols is the name of the book. And I've got it available on pre-order on Amazon. So if you just type Understanding Cemetery Symbols into Amazon, you can pre-order it. The reason to pre-order it is it's half price. It's only $9.99, which every time I say $9.99, I feel like I'm on one of those, QVC channels. But still, it is only $9.99. You won't get a set of knives or anything with it, but you will get my book and my blood, sweat, and tears into it. I'm really excited about it. I'm making a progress on getting that done. It comes out on August 19th, and I'm having a Facebook party on my Facebook page that day, like the release date, and I'll be on a radio show that night. I'm going to be on the radio this Sunday. In fact, I'm going to be on Howie O'Dell Rift Network. If you want to find out where I'll be, I think I've been tagged in a link, but you can just follow my Facebook page, Tui Snyder Author. I'll be putting it up there. It's going to be a fun 2-hour interview, so people can call in and ask questions about cemetery symbols and any other stuff. I've never been on this show before. I do have one other story I wanted to relate, because we were talking, it happened to me in New Orleans, in Cypress Grove Cemetery. I got to experience a little bit of what it must be like to be a ghost. Because when Mark was talking about how they can be good, but they still scare you, that's sort of how I felt. It was really hot. My husband was staying in the car, humid too. Oh, and I stepped out of the car and I saw this really beautiful marble symbol I wanted to get a photo of. So I'm trying to get it, the best shot and get the glare and not reflect and all this or that. And I see a cemetery worker who is, he's tending a grave, and because grass grows up through them, and so they have to break it up to keep the weeds from collecting on the dirt ones. They used to plant them with flowers, but now when it's over 100 years old, there aren't relatives there to plant them with flowers anymore. So this guy was madly, hitting the dirt and doing all this and that. And I kind of looked over at him and waved, but I thought, oh, well, he doesn't see me. So I kept taking pictures, and there was a mild breeze came up, which I was so grateful for. I'm thinking, this is nice. All of a sudden I see the guy kind of put his shovel down, look around, and his eyes are really big. He's scared, obviously. So I'm like, what? I'm thinking a big dog is coming. What is he so scared of? I'm looking around. I don't see anything. And then finally he looks at me and he goes, oh, it's you I'm smelling. It sure enough ain't Roy. And I'm like, because I guess the guy's name was Roy in the grave he was doing. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry you smell me. And he's like, no, it smells good. I just thought it didn't smell, I thought I was, because sometimes, man, you can smell a ghost. And he's like this big bearded guy. And I'm like, not someone you would think would be scared. He was kind of burly and had tattoos and stuff. And yet I scared him. So I think I have a little bit of a feeling of what it might be like to just be innocently going about your ghostly life, perhaps, and you see people freaking out and dropping dishes. Who knows what? It scares you. I wonder how often we actually startle a ghost. That's
yeah.
my question.
That can happen. I actually startled a ghost one time.
Uh-huh.
That's the only time I can think of. Usually I think it's the other way around.
Well, yeah.
But, and you never, by the way, I get asked this question all the time. No, I never get used to it. No, I never get used to it. But I was in a particularly haunted 2-story, it was a big townhouse, but it was like almost 3,000 square feet. It was big. And so my daughters had just gone off to go pick out a movie and do some stuff with a family member. And so it was just me there. And I said, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to clean up. We just had lunch. I was going to clean everything up. And so I had, all my arms, full of dishes, different things. And I felt something behind me, and I knew nobody was there. And I thought, and we had no pets at the time. So I thought that was odd. And so as I was walking to the kitchen with all these things, I just spun around. And as I spun around with all these dishes, there standing there was probably about, it was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. And she was in a little house on the prairie type clothes, sort of thing. And as I spun around, I didn't make any noise, but I kind of, spun, and she went, and just disappeared. But she made an audible,
Wow.
so she was probably just having fun with us that day and following me around, and maybe was lonely. She had no negativity to her at all. I think she was probably just a little lonely spirit, and she was enough in the moment maybe that she was in form, and I startled her. And so that was the time I scared a ghost. So that was one thing. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Foltz, what is going on with you? You have a new ghost tour coming up as well as books. Tell us what's happening.
I do. Before I start that, I have to say something while I'm thinking about it.
Oh, we can't hear you, though.
I said, before I tell about me, I have to tell a little bit of something I'm thinking about. Because when we were talking mirrors, everyone needs to remember in the Victorian era, when people would die, they would cover the mirrors with black cloth to keep the spirits from staying in the mirrors or being trapped in the mirrors.
Uh-huh.
So, and usually if you see one in the mirror, it's not usually a bad thing, because a lot of really bad spirits are afraid to see their reflection.
Yeah, they don't want to see their reflection.
They don't see it. So if you see something, it's not necessarily as bad as it could be. Because
Right.
a lot of people put mirrors in their houses to scare off demons and bad spirits.
Yeah.
But,
Now, Mark, let me stop you for just a second. I don't think the camera's picking you up. You're going to have to speak a little louder.
all right, can you hear me?
Yes, now it can.
You can hear me. All right. Right now, I am working on a ghost tour in Chattanooga. Miss Teal has helped me with my website, and she knows how much I'm pulling my hair out over that. But it's hopefully going to start next weekend. I'm really excited for it. It's been a long time coming. I've got all my hats and my costumes and everything ready. I'm ready to go. I'm working on 3 books. One is the Corpsewood Catchfly, which we have worked on right now, and it's very unique. Then I have the Psychic Worm Stitch, and then I have, which is a book, a kind of a how-to book on how to do psychic work and how it all functions the way I see it. And then there's the Darkest Corner, which I already have about 200 pages of, which is true stories of necrophilia and necromancy, which there are just tons of stories of it on the internet. I mean, just tons. And so it turned out to be a very easy to write book. And then what I'm going to do is go through and do psychic observations about each story. So that's what I have going on right now. I have the books. I have the tour. I'm doing illustrations for Teal's upcoming book, the sequel to Spirited Tales, and getting some stories ready for that. And so right now, I think that's pretty much enough. I think I'm a
That's
little.
plenty. That's a lot. You have a lot going on. And yes, everybody, I'm Teal Gray. And so you can also reach me on tealgray.com. And we do have a sequel to our best-selling book, Spirited Tales. This one is called Scared Senseless. And we're going to focus, just like we did today, a little bit on, did you see that? Did you hear that? Did you feel that? And did you smell that? All these things that interact with our senses and terrify us. So we hope we can terrify you just a little for fun with that. And I also have my line of products of protection, like and purifying. You know, we're all just energy, and everybody's energy interacts with our spaces, some living, some dead. Claudia touched on that so many people moving into Denver just en masse, you know, a lot of things come along with them. And so if you're interested in any of that, you'll be able to see that and purchase that. I have purifying room spray, as well as I grow my own herbs and sage and everything, several different types. I make my own smudge sticks. I have the spray for people who maybe have allergies or they're traveling where you can't have, you can't light a candle, anything like that, or smudge a hotel room. You also, if for people who live in dorms or certain situations like that, you can't do that either, or they have allergies or asthma, they can use the cleansing purifying spray to do the same thing as you would if you use the smudge stick. And so that's another possibility. And then I also have the purifying potpourri, and that is something that will clear the energy of the space that you put it in. So you can have that not just in a bowl to be pretty, but you can take bits of it, you can throw it onto a candle that you are burning. I have people that tell me they take a little handful, and when they sit around their fire with friends or they have friends coming over, they'll throw that into not just the fireplace, but some have fire pits outside, and they'll do that. So it gives this lovely aroma, but also cleanses the space for all the people that are going to be there. And sometimes they'll do it after the people have been there. So it just depends. So all of that is available. And of course, always got lots of books and things and projects in the works. And we're always happy to interact with you guys. So we hope you're enjoying the videos. I've gotten a lot of feedback that you are enjoying it. So let us know with this one what scares you and what you'd like us to talk about next. So from all of us, we will see you next month, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.